Stitches. A doctor threads a needle through your wound and pulls it tight to close the skin. As the stitches hold the edges together, the wound becomes inflamed as new cells begin to repair the tissue. Afterwards, connective tissues and collagens start to create skin. Then, blood vessels form to nourish these developing tissues, filling in the area. And over a few weeks, the wound will have healed together and the stitches are removed. If you get a splinter, most people just go ahead and pull them out. But sometimes they get lodged so deep into your skin that you can't reach them. If the area gets infected, it will start to swell as pus forms under the skin. This creates pressure around the splinter that can sometimes push it upwards towards the skin's surface. And if you're lucky, after a certain period of time, your body could have completely removed it from your skin.
Have you ever noticed how odd the McFlurry spoon is? Well, some people think it's supposed to work like a straw, but you only have to try that once to realize it does not work. The true reason for these weird spoons is actually pretty genius. You see, McDonald's didn't want to clean their beaters after every McFlurry, so instead, they designed a spoon that would also work as the mixer. Have you ever noticed how odd the McFlurry
If you shot a bullet at ancient armor, some people think it could actually stop the impact. But armor like chainmail was designed to block slashing swords. And plate armor was even better at deflecting strikes, by spreading the blunt force across more area, lessening its impact. But these materials weren't very good at stopping arrows, which had enough energy to enter the armor, so a bullet would have no trouble going right through. If you somehow removed all of the blood vessels in your body and tied them together, you might think it would be about this long. But the human body has thousands of these tiny vessels that weave in and out of every body part. And with all of them combined, if you started in New York, your blood vessels would make it all the way to the Grand Canyon. It would go on to reach all the way across the Pacific Ocean, over Japan, Asia, and all of Europe. And not only would it make it all the way back to your starting point, but it would be able to make this trip 2 to 4 times over. When a firing squad shoots a prisoner, one of the bullets actually isn't real. You see, one of the rifles is loaded with a blank, but it still fires and kicks back when the trigger is pulled. The soldiers aren't told which rifle it is, casting doubt on who actually shot and killed the man. This way, the soldiers can feel less guilty and sleep at night, knowing there was a chance that they weren't the one to kill him. If everyone on Earth clipped their toenails and threw them into the ocean, you might think they'd float and blanket a huge area. But toenails don't actually float, so they would pile up at the bottom of the ocean. As over 82 billion clippings rain down, it would choke fish and smother the seafloor until a massive pile broke through the surface. And after this global clipping, you would have a walkable toenail island, 10 times bigger than Central Park. When a doctor gives you a shot, they can sometimes accidentally push the needle all the way through your vein, which ends up puncturing both sides. Once the needle is removed, it leaves 2 holes in the vein. And before the body can thicken the blood and seal these holes, it bleeds into the surrounding tissues. This leaked blood forms a dark, tender area under the skin, creating bruises and splotchy areas. When a doctor gives you a shot,
Have you ever wondered how this trick is done? It's one of those things where you know he can't actually be making the salt disappear, but it's still confusing to look at. Well, it turns out that the simplest explanation is the right one. Look closely at his hand during this shot. Do you notice how he sort of grabs his thumb here? Well, this is because he's using a prop called a Dofi finger. He holds it in his fist like a cup, fills it up with the salt, gets it onto his other thumb, and then grabs it off his thumb back into the first position. Watch it again and see if you can notice. Have you ever wondered how this trick is done?
if you lose one of your adult teeth, the bone where the tooth once was can start to deteriorate. To prevent further damage, a dentist will fill the cavity with a synthetic material that mimics real bone. Once filled, a metal bracket is secured on top and the incision is closed. After the graft has healed, a large implant post is inserted into the new bone. Then a small metal piece is screwed in and a porcelain tooth is secured on top. If you lose, they opened the pallet of ammunition only to find it was full of Tootsie Rolls. You see, Tootsie Roll was a code name for mortar rounds, which the Marines desperately needed. But the radio operator who received the order didn't know that and sent the actual candy instead. At first, the Marines were angry, but the sub-freezing temperatures had frozen all their food, and the candies ended up sustaining them over the next few days. They even used them to plug bullet holes by warming them up and letting them freeze in place. And eventually, the real mortar rounds did arrive. They opened the pallet of ammunition. If you accidentally touched a table saw, you'd probably think your fingers would be cut off. But this isn't always the case. You see, some modern high-end saws actually know the difference between wood and your skin. Once your finger comes in contact with these special saws, it immediately detects the electrical conductivity from your skin. This triggers an immediate mechanical response that stops the blade in less than 5 milliseconds. When a honeybee stings a human, they actually get stuck for a while and can't leave. And this is because their stinger is barbed, which means it can't retract once it's lodged into something. But once the bee finally pulls away, its insides get ripped out because the stinger stays in the skin. This leaves the bee without some of its internal organs, resulting in its death. When a honeybee stings a Have you ever wondered about this little dangly thing at the back of your throat? Well, even though it looks like a miniature punching bag, it actually serves a handful of important functions. You see, when you swallow food, this thing called a uvula actually swings backwards to prevent the food from going up your nose. It's also constantly producing saliva to keep the throat moist, which aids in swallowing. And because there's a tiny muscle inside the uvula, it can move around, which helps you speak. Have you ever wondered about if you stuck a long sword out of a car aiming for a tree? The sword would obviously snap and rip from your hands. But what if the sword is unbreakable, you have an indestructible grip, and your body is physically immovable? Well, the force would then transfer to the car. It would screech to a halt as the sword hits. But what if the car can't stop and is forced to keep moving? Now the tree should split in half. But if the tree is indestructible too, with no way to break, bend, or stop, the energy has nowhere to escape. Would this unleash a massive shockwave as powerful as a nuclear explosion? Or worse, something reality itself isn't equipped to contain? A red-hot iron is pushed into the tree, wounding it on purpose. Then a syringe filled with salt water is emptied inside the hole. This causes the tree to flood the damaged area with sticky resin to stop the damage. And over the next few years, the resin slowly spreads, turning into a sweet-smelling wood deep inside the trunk. Finally, it's harvested and sold for thousands of dollars per pound before being made into a luxury perfume. A red